Tonight, we are happy to have Mr. Jameel Ahmed as he taps on his professional experience to share how a willingness to push one's engineering capabilities, entrepreneurial and business administration skills to the limit can open new doors to a fulfilling career. Mr. Jameel has more than 20 years of experience in energy and chemical engineering works. He is currently the founder and managing director of several marine energy companies such as IES Energy Marine Services SB Malaysia, International Energy Project PL Singapore, and Terminal Subsea Solutions Marine LLC UAE. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Jameel Ahmed.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for all of you to come. I know it's late in the day, everybody's tired, so we'll try and keep it short and, relatively exciting, okay? So, before I start, I just wanted to present the very first thing. The title of my talk is Engineering and Reinventing Yourself as an Entrepreneur. And one of the things, Singapore, as you know, has been, we just finished the birthday, I think, a month ago, three and a half weeks ago, 9th of August. So Singapore's gone through, become successful by being able to reinvent itself. And that's basically what I'm saying. We have to learn from not only ourselves, from university, but also from the countries, from what is happening in the world. Okay? So the whole thing is all about how we reinvent ourselves, just like Singapore. And I've given a quick Google, so when you just to see how everything fits in. As an entrepreneur, we all have to have one leader. You know, a ship cannot last with two captains. It either sinks or you have a mutiny. So you can only have one captain, okay? So that's where the leader comes in. Then in addition, you have the team. The team have to support the leader. So you have the team supporting the leader, you look at risk tolerance, and between the knowledge, the innovation, you come up with a business. Okay? That's what we're talking about. That is innovation. It's not to me, it's to every entrepreneur. Okay? That's what we all have to go through. Okay, so this one gives in a nutshell what the entrepreneur does. I'll give you a quick intro to myself. My name, as he said, is Jameel Ahmed Bashir Ahmed. I studied at the University of Leeds in energy engineering in '91, and I got my chemical engineering master's at the University of Bradford also in '93. And my professional career, I was actually a petroleum engineer. So you can see, I started as an energy engineer. I reinvented myself and studied chemical engineering. And then I went to work as a petroleum engineer. It's all engineering, but it's completely different, okay? So that's part and parcel of keeping ourselves relevant. Then, after about 11 years, I decided, yeah, it's time for me to see what I can do. I need to stop being an employee and try and do something else. That's when my entrepreneurial careers took off. We took over a marine company. I also started in energy support services. I actually started two companies at the same time. They did really well. 2007, we delivered our very first of 9 vessels. So I used to deliver, build, get the contracts, and deliver every year. So we did really well. We built our first well services facility in Brunei. Then in 2013, I got away from the Southeast Asia region. I think our introduction was how Singapore has to take advantage of the opportunities available outside Southeast Asia. And we did that in 2013. So we first went out to the United Arab Emirates, then we went to Qatar, and then we finally formed our very own company in 2015, end of the year actually. And now we are looking at we are reinventing ourselves. One of the things I'm sure you would have seen in the last couple of years since the oil price crash is when the oil prices dropped, A lot of Singapore companies who were exposed to the oil and gas industry, they went through a lot of challenges. Quite a lot of them went under, unfortunately. So for us, as an entrepreneur, we need to see how we can remain relevant, how we can reinvent ourselves. And that's when we said, right, this year we're going to become an integrated solutions provider. It's not like we decided one day we got up and said, hey, I'm going to be an integrated service provider. It took us some time. We had to come up with a roadmap, and then we finally went ahead and did that. So that's just a quick 2-minute plug about myself. First, before I go on to this slide, I want to ask everyone, a lot of people I think have been around. How many of you are entrepreneurs and how many of you work for somebody else? A show of hands is enough. Yes, I asked 2 questions. Yeah, okay, fine. How many of you work for somebody else? Okay, that's actually a majority. All right, so maybe this is relevant then. So the definition of an entrepreneur is, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, an entrepreneur is a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses, taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. That's what an entrepreneur does. If you go to the internet definition is a person who sets up a business or businesses taking on financial risks in the hope of profit. This one, they don't mention profit. That one, they say we want profit. That is life. We need a profit. And another definition is an innovator who recognizes and seizes opportunities, converts those opportunities into workable, marketable ideas, adds value through time, effort, money, or skills, and assumes the risks of the competitive marketplace to implement these ideas and realizes the rewards from these efforts. That's basically what the second one is, but it elaborates. So, as most of you work for somebody else, this is actually a big challenge. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. So, if you haven't left or you're thinking about it, keep thinking. Don't do it. It's not as easy as it seems, and it is a challenge. But if you're full of energy, this is what you want to do. Then if you've got the right product, the right service, then you want to you can reinvent yourself, then you do it. But if you work for a big organization, I work for a big organization, I work for a government. You come into work at 7:45, you leave at 4:30, the phone doesn't ring after 4:30. I don't answer the phone. That's big organization. If you run your own business, the phone is on 24 hours a day. And I had it on for I think when I was building up the business, I think 8 years, 24 hours a day. Then when I reached a certain stage, we had people, then 12 o'clock, we turned off the phone. Okay, so let's move on. Just for you to understand, since there's quite a few people who work for other people, there are types of entrepreneur, 4 types, okay? You have the small businesses, independently owned and operated companies, 1 to 300 people, scalable startups, internet companies, franchise companies, all the big ones which people hope VCs to come out and help them. Those are the scalable startups. That means if you can do something small, you can make it much, much bigger. You have the large companies, more employees in a more complex management hierarchy, like what maybe you're working. I know I'm working. I used to work in one. And a large number of clients, businesses, contacts, and a great volume of business. That means basically, if you're in a big organization, you are just a cogwheel in the whole machinery. Doesn't mean you're not important. You are important. But what it means is there's a little bit of leeway. You don't have to perform at your fullest to make sure that the organization fails. But in an entrepreneur, you can't afford that. You have to be on your toes all the time, and it is stressful sometimes. And then you have social entrepreneurs. So all of these engage in different types of entrepreneurship. So when you're working for somebody, working for the government, working for a big company, you're given a lot of privileges. When you become an entrepreneur, you don't get anything. You have to work. You got to hustle, as the Americans say. So some people can't take it. That's the reason. Usually people who have retired, unless they're brought into a bigger company, when they start their own business, they get a shock. Why? Because when they were in the government or a big organization, they were treated like, royalty. Suddenly they do their own and they've got to do everything themselves. That happened to me. So I can vouch for that story. Okay? If you don't have any questions, I'll move on to the next one. Okay. Entrepreneurs, they have certain characteristics. Again, I vouch for this. I'm speaking from my experience. I didn't take it from a book. Yeah, I'm just telling you from what it is. So we design, launch, and run new businesses. Therefore, most of their companies are initially small ones. That's how I started. And most people are like that. They have entrepreneurship. I think everybody knows how Microsoft started. Everybody knows how Apple started. They started from a garage. So that's how they did. I did the same. I started from my smallest room in the house, and that's how I built up my company. And entrepreneurship is a capacity and willingness to create and manage a business venture. It also includes being willing to take risks so that their venture can make a profit. The managing the risk is the most difficult part to think about when you're running a business. If you are thinking of an idea, there's a good chance you think yours the only idea which will work. The problem is it's not always the fact. Sometimes what you think is a good idea may not necessarily be a good idea. And that is the reason we always try and identify risks. That's why we need to have mentors. Somebody, a third party telling you, hey, Jameel, this is not a good idea because Mr. Joe Bloggs has got that, or Sam's done this, or John has done that. So it's really, really, really important that you manage the business venture, you understand the risks, what are you proposing? That is what it is all about. And entrepreneurs are enterprising people. They're daring in business, pursue their new ideas regardless of the risks. And you don't always win. Okay? I'm the first to also admit I lost a few. That's life. But as long as you manage the risk, then you cover your bases. Then you make sure that you don't go past a certain amount. Then you say, right, I'm willing to lose this much, and after that, I call it a day. But you need to be able to do that. They do that on the stock market. They have stop losses, so that if you go past a certain floor, you stop. On businesses, they don't have that simple thing. There's many things which contribute to a business. It could be your sales. It could be your clients. It could be what is happening right now between China and America, where Trump is adding tariffs and the Chinese are adding more tariffs on Americans. So it's going tit for tat, and it's been going on for months. And who is suffering? There's an old saying, if two elephants fight, guess who gets crushed? It's the ants. We are the ants. Singapore is feeling Singapore, Malaysia, all the countries are feeling what these two big economic powerhouses are doing to each other. And we cannot control it. And that's one of the reasons we must always be on our toes. We can't say, right, I've built my business, I'm now worth $10 million, I don't have to worry. It could disappear as quickly as it came unless you cashed out and put it into the bank. And for all you know, the banks fail as well. So yeah. Okay. Now, this one. These are the characteristics of an entrepreneur. I took it off an internet page, and I was looking through it. The reason I like it is this one slide is enough. It encompasses everything an entrepreneur should have. So the first thing is somebody who sees a new opportunity and creates a business to exploit it. Please remember, there is always business available. The problem is, or the challenge is, how do we take it? As an example, I work in the Middle East. I've never worked in the Middle East. I've been there, to perform my minor pilgrimage, my major pilgrimage, but I've never actually worked there. And the people there are different. The way you think about them is different. The challenges are different. It's a physically harsh climate. It's not something you know, in Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, everything is tidak apa, no problem, no issues. There, it's not like that. It's a very harsh environment. If you do something wrong, it affects your business. If you speak wrongly to a person, you get killed. So it's a kill literally. Yeah? So it's not the same. So we need to understand the opportunity. We need to know how to exploit it. We need to have strong business acumen. We need to say, look, if I do this, what can I get out of it? How can I benefit out of it? And one of the things as an entrepreneur is you need to have strong people skills. I'm the managing director and shareholder of my business. I go down to the ground if we have a problem, and I speak to guys on the floor. You know, somebody's earning $1,500 a day, a month. We have to do it because they are willing to, they respect people who come down and speak to them. So it's really, really important that we need to be able to deal with people, and we need to have tons of courage. Sometimes initially what you think is right goes wrong. What do you do then? Do you cut losses, or do you wait and see, maybe I can change things around by doing something else? And that is what you need to think all the time. We have to be open-minded. We have to be determined. We have to be creative. Remember, problems do not follow textbook questions. I'll give you a mathematic question. If I say, what is 1 plus 1? Can anybody answer that? 1 plus 1. It should be easy. 1 plus 1. 2, exactly. If I ask you 1,575,000 divided by 5, everybody can answer the question. You just need a piece of paper or a pencil, and you work it out, or you have a calculator. It can be done. You just have to think about it. Yeah? So some people can't think for whatever reason. They can't think when a problem arises, how do you solve the problem? And that is what entrepreneurs do. They try and think around the problem. They think through the problem. They think out of the problem. They look at it from the big picture. They look at the helicopter view. How do we solve the problem? Some problems cannot be solved, but the majority of them can. The majority of problems can always be solved. And your ability to solve problems is what gives you profit. So but to have all that, again, you need to have strong business acumen. You need to have tons of courage. You need to be determined to make sure it works. So this is also very important. You need to have passion. Some people do something which they are very, very passionate about. And those businesses do very well. There's actually a saying, it's a Chinese saying. He said, do something what you love, and you will never work a day in your life. That means if you believe that you're enjoying your work, you will not feel like working. I mean, you don't feel like it's work. It's part of your passion. Okay? A lot of people are like that. A lot of people, Elon Musk, he says, you know, even if I had no money, I still would work because he enjoys his work. So that is something a lot of entrepreneurs have. You have to be a self-starter. Just because you have an organization of 200-300 people doesn't mean you don't have work. If you have a proper system by rights, you shouldn't have work. But unfortunately, human beings are not robots. One day somebody doesn't feel well, another one just had a fight with his girlfriend. You know, everybody's different. That day he might spoil the day, he might have messed up something. So people always change. So that is the reason you need to be able to say, okay, this guy can't do it, I can't find anybody else, let me sit down and do it. Not everything, but certain things you have to do it yourself. You don't say, I'm going to leave it to the guy on the ground. Okay? And this is important. Entrepreneurs are very competitive. It's what we call the kiasu attitude. And we have a lot of kiasu attitude over there in the Middle East. So we are very, very, very competitive. And we are adaptable people, and you have to be a fast learner. And this one, right at the bottom, you'd have to have a strong work ethic. you need to be able to say, you know what, it's 5 o'clock, I want to go home, but the business is not ready to let me go, I need to work. Even when, especially when you first start, the majority of the time you're working 14 to 16 hours a day. Not for one day, not for 1 week, not for 1 month. It could last years. I've gone through that, okay? I've gone through the 14, 16-hour cycles. You sleep at 3 or 4 in the morning because you're doing tenders, and you're up at 6 back to work. So we've all been through that, and that's the kind of work ethic you need, okay? So one of the reasons we're talking about this, the title was, how do you reinvent yourself? So when you want to reinvent yourself, you're an engineer, there's a lot of people, we have to think to ourselves, there are approximately 100,000 university students in Singapore, engineering. I checked on the internet before I came over. That means you need to have 100,000 jobs. And every year, that figure goes up. So now the challenge for the government and everybody else is, how do you absorb 100,000 graduates? NUS is supposed to have 1,500 graduates a year coming out for engineering alone. That's NUS. Then you have the polytechnics, you've got all the others. So the question is, where do they all go? If you follow Taiwan, Taiwan's got a lot of graduates who come out of university, no jobs. So they go ahead and study masters. Then they do their masters, they come out, no jobs. They are stuck. Singapore is not in that situation, but the government is concerned. And this is where, if we look behind, this is actually a very beautiful venue. You see all the big finance houses and all the banks out there. They are looking for the next Microsoft. They are looking for the next Apple. They are looking for the next Elon Musk to come along and say, we can make you billions, please, we want to lend you some money. And Singapore is at that point. So now the question is, what is it you can do to grab a small piece of the pie? There's actually a lot out there, but you need to have all these characteristics so that you can take a piece of that money from all those buildings out there and start your own business. If it's not you, your children. If it's not your children, it's your grandchildren. Because that's where all these people go. I just give one example. Air Asia was started in 2000. Started with 2 airlines, 100 million ringgit debt. Today, it's a billion ringgit company. And they achieved that in less than 10 years. Why? 3 people saw that there was an opportunity. They created a low-cost business, and now everyone follows that. Scoot came along, and Malindo Air came along, and everybody came along. But the people who were the first movers, they always get the advantage. Yeah? So when you can identify something, and you know you have all the right networks, and if you don't have the right networks, you might have family who do. You don't have family, you will have friends who do. But sooner or later, somebody will see it. But you need to market it, you need to show it, and you need to identify that there's a really good business. And there's no guarantee it can happen overnight. It takes some time. Okay? For me, it took me time. But it can be done, and in Singapore, you have to remember, Singapore, the government is pro-business. A lot of countries around the world are not pro-business. They would rather just give it to someone who's willing to take the risk, come in, do your work, pay you, and then move on. So the reason, that's why I'm saying this talk is all about how to look for new opportunities and how to create a business, how to reinvent ourselves. And engineers who are there, who are graduated, they're graduating from some of the best schools around. Those who have got experience in Singapore, they have a lot of experience to share, and you can monetize that experience. So the question is, do you want to do it? Now, let me just move on. Just remember, of all the slides, this is it. If you want one takeaway from this, it's this slide, nothing else. All the rest is just supporting. Okay. So, let's assume you found something you like to do. Okay? First thing is, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? The general comment by everyone is, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a multi-millionaire. I want to be a billionaire. I want to be a multi-billionaire. That's what everybody says. Yeah, everybody thinks it's easy. Once you have the money, everything's easy. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, his wife divorced him, and she got $38 billion US. What did she do with the money? She gave 50% away. She's pledged it, 50%. Yeah. So this is what we want. Not necessarily it'll help us, but that's what we want. But a lot of people are actually passionate. You know, they want to do something because of. Okay, if you ask me why did I come out of the government and start my own company, it wasn't for the money actually. To be honest, I wasn't so keen on the money. It was more on I wanted to do the business and start something. I wanted to leave a legacy behind. To say, hey, this guy he came out of nowhere, he came out from a government, a civil servant, and he started a multi-million-dollar business. That is what it was about. Money is, yeah, if you work hard, you get the money. That's not an issue. The issue is why. So that's your goal. You have to decide, what do I want to do this? Is it because I can do this better than the other guy? And that's what Microsoft and Apple did. They said they could do better than IBM. Some people say, no, we don't want anything. We just want to help the man on the street, the earth. We want to help mankind. Right now, the world is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. Ice caps are melting all over the place. A lot of people around the world are suffering because of the fact that there's not enough fresh water. Out of the 100%, if you put all the water in the world and say it's 100%, we are living off 1%. So 99% we can't touch it. It's seawater. It's water stuck in the aquifers. It's water somewhere else. We don't touch it. The whole of mankind, 7 billion people are living off 1% of the water resources that the world has. So if you go to Africa, you go to some South America, recently one part of India is dry and the other part of India it's flooded. Those places, they're dying for water, fresh water. And what can we do? Singapore, okay, fine, we have water. Malaysia, lots of water. Thailand, Indonesia, no problem. Brunei, no problem. We are very blessed to be in Southeast Asia. But the rest of the world, well, we don't know. Even the United Kingdom, I studied there for a long time. They have, when I first went, I was quite young. There was, water, everybody used it. And towards the time I left, I was there for just under 10 years. And they had hose pipe bans because there's no water. This is the United Kingdom. They had lots of water in Scotland. They had lots of water in Wales, but they had no water in England. So we are truly blessed to be living in this part of the world. We are truly blessed, honestly. Okay, so we might say, well, I want to help solve the problem of water. I want to help the humankind. I want to help 50% of the human beings in providing them with drinkable, potable, fresh water which doesn't kill them. That in itself is a business. And there's a lot of companies who have invested billions of dollars looking for how do we desalinate salt water? How do we freshen bracken water? how do we reuse, they've done it in Singapore, sewage. So, there is, that's why I said, it's a matter of doing a 1+1, identifying what is a problem and identifying a solution. And that's where the dollars come in. What's our stated desired objective? World peace. I know a lot of people would like world peace. We want to help millions of people. A lot of people out there, even North Korea is struggling with rice. They're struggling with food. There's malnutrition, and that's not very far away. And of course, all of us, you, me, we want to have a comfortable retirement for you and your family. We want our children to be successful. We want our grandchildren to be successful. If possible, we'd all like to leave a legacy behind. That's what we want. That's the reason we want to be entrepreneurs. So we leave something behind. So people will say, hey, Grandpa was a really smart guy. Because of him, I'm enjoying my trust. So that could be one of the reasons. So I've stated the goals. So today's situation is number of graduating, companies focusing on the bottom line. I was reading in the internet, in Singapore, it's not as bad as Taiwan, but they're saying Singaporean graduates who graduate are under pressure because there are other graduates who come in for a lower pay. And they said, right now we're not as bad as we were in Taiwan, but time will come when the market cannot absorb these new graduates. So what do we do? And that's when some people say, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to do something. I'm going to try and help people. I'm going to try and do something. I'm going to try and absorb some graduates. I'm going to start a company. I'm going to I'm going to start saying, I will recruit them. That's a lot of brain power. Graduates have gone through a process. They're smart. If you take them, get them to think about it, get them and say, look, this is my problem. I need you to do this. I'll pay you your salary. Can you work for me? So this is the situation. Do we want to do it? Yes or no? I took in a lot of graduates in my time. And to be honest, the fresh graduates are the best because they're young, they're innocent, and they're full of energy. By the time you reach my age, I'm tired. I'm really tired. So they are the best. So another reason, why do you want to do all this? You could say, hey, listen, I'm tired of the office politics. I'm tired of the rat race. I'm burnt out. I need a change of career. I need a change of pace. I need a relaxed time. As an entrepreneur, if I run my own company, I can work from home. I can see my wife and kids, even though I'm working. I do that, okay? When I first started it, I was out in the office the whole time. But as I get a little bit older, then, spend more time in the office and just use the phone like to call people all over the place. And it's nice to be at home. Honestly, it's very nice to be at home. You have to travel, you travel. But if you have to, you can do your work from home, and you say, hey guys, can you do this? You can do this. I just hired some people for the Middle East office. One's an Egyptian fresh graduate from Marine, as a Marine engineer. And his energy levels are so different. He reminds me of me when I was 20 years old. And I can't remember how long that was. So young people are full of energy. Their thought process is different. They're innocent. And these are the kind of people who can help us grow. I've got one video for you. Right at the end, you must listen to it, because what I just said, a multi-billionaire is saying the same thing. Okay? So now let's move on. Okay. Okay. When you want to run your own business, you have to build up a roadmap. You can't just run a map. You have to build a roadmap and say, I'm going to do this, 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 this. Okay? You need to be focused. What are you planning to do? How you're planning to get there? And why you want to do that? What are your different strategies? What are your different options? You need to look at all these things. So you have different types of strategies. Some people want to be a service provider. They provide IT support services. They do programming, air conditioning. They say, right, we'll fix everything for you. This is my charge. So those are service providers. So you don't have to come up with a lot of high capital expenditure. Some of them are low capex equipment provider, or some of them are high capex equipment provider. I'm a high capex equipment provider. Okay, I'll show you what I do later, right at the end. But so it's something I want to do, or I have been doing for the last decade or so. Some of them want to be integrated solutions provider. These guys combine the two. I'm now reinventing myself to come to this level. So as an entrepreneur, you have to decide, hey, I might have somebody who's got a high capex equipment. I know how to do X, Y, Z. If I can combine the two, I will do this work for them. That's what Singapore's been good at for the last 50 years. And this is how we move ahead. So these are just 3 things I've highlighted. But in general, it covers everything. We just have to decide what are the advantages and disadvantages of each. Some people will say, you know what, I'd love to be a high capex equipment provider, but you know what, nobody's supporting me. The banks don't want to give me any money. What do I do? Then you have to consider something else. Then maybe say, right, I'll work my way up here, but I'm going to start there. Everybody can provide something. We decide the cost of each option, and this is really, really, really important. Risks. It is critical as an entrepreneur that we identify the type of risks we have. Each business has a risk. There is no business with no risk. It's just impossible to have a business without risk. Every business has a risk. Even if you say, hey, all I'm doing is supplying shipping containers to the Chinese to export to the US. What are your risks? Well, the US is saying, right, we're going to put tariffs on this. So there's less requirements for shipping containers. The Chinese will say, well, you know, Jameel is giving me these containers for $2,000 a month. I'm going to build it for myself for $1,000 a month. That's the end of your business model. So there's always risks. You will survive a while, but you have to reinvent yourself. You need to think, what can my competitors do to me? And that is something you need to look at. So the first risk I just told you about, this is business risks, okay? It's always something we need to think about as an owner, as an entrepreneur. You need to always think, what can push me off my perch? Who can come and compete with me to give me a lot of stress, who can put me out of business? That's always something you need to think about. As an entrepreneur, when you reached a certain stage, you've achieved, you've got contracts, you've got people coming in, you've got stable revenue. What's the next issue? As an entrepreneur, you have to think, who can put me out of my business? Who can compete with me and reduce my margins? What can happen in the environmental, say the political sense? What can happen if I'm working, say, with China and the US? I provide the ship which supplies the containers which goes from China to US and the other way. So there's always risks, and we always have to mitigate. When I went to the bank to borrow some money, I had a couple of $100 million worth of contracts. And I thought, right, I've got a lot of contracts, the banks will lend me money. The bank said no. I said, why? I have hundreds of millions of dollars in contract. All your contracts are from one client. All your eggs are in one basket. We can't lend you any money. That's when I thought, that's a stupid bank. Then I realized later on, they're not as stupid. They're just protecting, they are mitigating their risk in lending some money to you because all your contracts are coming from one place. It's a very dangerous thing. If something happens to that one client, you have a lot of problems. Okay? Then you have, as I said, client risks, which is what I just told you about. What happens if your client goes under? What if your client has problems? What if you don't know much about your client? What if your client is, banned by the United States government, which is what happened recently with the Iranian oil tanker in Gibraltar. So I felt really sorry for those guys. They got caught, they were arrested, and they had all kinds of problems, all because they said, right, this oil shouldn't go to Syria. So you need to know who your clients are. You have shareholders' risks. As I mentioned a couple of years ago, when the oil prices dropped, quite a lot of the oil companies deferred projects. Not only did they defer projects, some of them were delayed to such an extent that the people who were relying on these contracts couldn't get the contracts in time, and that killed them. Financially, just killed them. And that's what happened to a number of companies here in Singapore, and they lost literally billions, and some of the banks out there lost because of that. Okay, this was just recent. Another thing we need to think about, we tend to form companies with business partners, with shareholders. Not shareholders as in a public listed company, but say a business partner. Maybe you and your partner do this. And when things are doing really well, you guys are best buddies. As soon as the dollars start rolling in, this is mine, that is yours, this one, why are you claiming this? That's when things come in. So partners' risks are, they're true. It can happen. You might think you guys are best buddies, but one day he just decides, hey, I want the money. He will look for every loophole in the book to try and get it out from you. That's also a risk. If your business becomes too successful, then you have that problem. Okay, we've talked about all these things. What do we need to set up? 3 things. We've got a startup ecosystem. It's got ideas, inventions, startups, entrepreneurs, but we just need 3 things. What are the 3 things? The most important, ideas. We need an idea. We need to have a problem which we can solve, and we are able to provide a solution, and on top of that, we can monetize it. That means we should be able to say, if I'm working for Singtel, Singtel will say, right, if you use this, I can give you X dollars. That is what the idea is about. The next most important is people have to believe in you. They have to say, hey, Jameel, are you sure you can do this? I don't believe you. The last time I saw you, you were sleeping under the tree. So they have to believe you. You have to be believable. They might be saying, if he's done it before, I'm sure he can do it now. Or I don't believe him. He sleeps all the time. He's lazy. Okay? So you need to have somebody saying, yes, he can do it, and he will carry it out, and he will make sure it's successful until it crystallizes. And the third most important thing, without this, nothing moves. Sorry to say that, nothing moves. Money. So all those beautiful buildings out there, right at the back, they've got all this money. Now it's a matter of convincing them how to get that money from them. That one I can't teach you. That one you have to talk to them, you have to explain to them, you have to tell them, listen, my idea is the next Bill Gates success story. It's the next Elon Musk story. It's the next Jeff Bezos story. That's all. I can't help you with this. This is the most difficult, to get the money from the financiers, the bankers, the venture capitalists, and the shareholders. It's the most challenging. If you can get those 3 things, it's done. If you're starting a service-oriented business, your capex requirement is not very high. You can just say, I can rent it for a few weeks, months, whatever, until you make enough to buy a small item and then buy it. And you can see a lot of that in all the industrial areas here in Singapore, or Malaysia, or Brunei, or the Middle East. The number of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, providing service-oriented business is the one which contributes more than 50% of GDP. It's not the big giants. It's the little players. All the little players. It's just the volume is so big. Okay? So, I've put this up. It's nice to see. It's nice for you to understand. This is what they teach you at MBA, if you're doing an MBA course. But you can boil all this down to three things: ideas, people to believe in, and money. Okay, we're here already, conclusion. So I'm coming back to the original drawings, which I showed right at the very beginning. So, as I said, there's a lot of money to be made. I'm working in an industry where in the Middle East alone, they're awarding 130 billion US dollars, 130 billion US. They need people. They need entrepreneurs. They need engineers. And this is what my talk started with. So then the question is, are you sure you want to be an entrepreneur? You have to work late hours. You have to work hard. You have to sacrifice quite a bit. I travel a lot, but it's either that or we don't do that. If you say, right, I'm willing to do all of that, yeah, what to do next? Then the question is, what are the action items? What is it I need to do? How do I get those three things we talked about, put it on a piece of paper and write it down and said, I can do this. We need to do research. You need to know who's your competition. Who is it who's doing it quietly that you don't know about? What happens if when you're just about to start, somebody comes up with it? You need to find out who else is working on your idea, who's working anything close to what you're talking about. Some people, sometimes, an idea is there, but for some reason people don't pick it up. And then once one person picks it up, then it becomes like a chain reaction. But the people who believe in it at the very beginning, who take the risk, they are the ones who get first movers advantage. Without a team, it's also difficult. If not, you have to work 16, 18 hours a day. And there are team members who have certain specific skill sets which you may not have. Okay, I can do a lot of things, but I can't do accounts. I'm the worst accountant around, but I can do everything else. Yeah, so you need somebody. I need a good accountant, somebody who can look after me, somebody who can look after the business. For a long time, I never understood certain accounting things, and it always hurt me in the end. Now I realize accountants are critical. Yeah, absolutely critical. Issuing invoice is one thing, but to manage the books, that's a challenge on itself. So prepare a business plan. And as I said, you need to mitigate your risks. And if everything you say, I can do this, I know I can do this, you need to have self-belief. You need to believe that you can do it. You must have that. If you can't believe in it, don't start. The majority of business, more than 90% of businesses fail within the first 2 years. Because people can't keep working and working and working and working 16, 18 hours a day. They just can't do it. It's some people can, some people can't. That's how it is. So it comes back to this same thing what I started with. I'll just show you what I do. And it's okay. It's okay. This is my company. It's and what I do, I actually own a vessel. And it took a lot of time and money to own that vessel, but I'm an engineer, so to be honest, this is my passion. I love engineering. I go out I don't like to sit in the office, but as you get older, you have to sit in the office. This is our ship. It's in the United Arab Emirates. We are surrounded by desert, except for there. We are installing, if you look at here carefully, this is an umbilical cable. We were laying about 20 kilometers of cable for the Middle East. We actually did it. So a tiny little company like us helped connect power cables and communication cables for them, and connected all the piping for Abu Dhabi. And this is something I did it myself. So we have some ROVs, we have cable tensioners. So this whole vessel was built here in Singapore. Okay, I bought it from a Singapore company, brought it over there. We initially worked this part of the world. This is some of the cables. So No, it's not a cable laying vessel. It's actually supposed to be a dive support vessel, but we do, we were very, how do I say it? We said, yes, we can do. We had a can-do attitude. So they used us for cable laying, they used us for air diving, they used us for installation of pipes, for ROV, remote operated vehicle. So because we had that, we didn't go under. A lot of my friends went under. They went bankrupt. But we do what we have to do. It's a very niche market, and you have to work extremely hard, extremely. And you need to tell them, because when you are doing something, as I said just now, 3 things: ideas, somebody to believe in you. To get that, money is hard, but to get somebody to believe in you and say, hey, Jameel, you can do it, that's tough. And once you do it the first time, everybody else believes you. Now we're working in Saudi Arabia. They say, you've done it. We've got all the certificates. No problem. But to get people to believe in you, that is the most difficult. Okay? Yeah. No, before that I worked in the government. I was a petroleum engineer. I learned this from scratch. I was a petroleum engineer. We did with the oil, yeah. So it was completely different. Yeah, this is, I mean, I'm an engineer, so I'm very passionate. I go out in the hot sun. I'm 50 degrees Celsius, I'm out in the hot sun just making sure everything's okay. Because we need the clients to be happy with us. If they are happy with you, they give you a job. Yeah, so they don't worry about contracts. If you're doing well, they like you, you don't mess with them, and you deliver, you don't break down, keeps going. Trust, it's all about trust.